Hello everyone, welcome back to Biotech Hub. We are continuing with our research and methodology series. It will be part 6, and in this part we will be discussing research methods that are being used, and I hope you'll enjoy it. So let's get started.
So we'll be looking into three common research methods: the scientific method, the deductive approach, and the inductive approach. So research methods are systemic process or techniques that are used by researchers to gather, analyze, and interpret the data in order to answer their research question or to test their hypothesis. So let's dig into the very first research method, that is scientific method. So scientific method is systematic approach to inquire, which may include several key steps like observation. So researcher makes an observation or gather the data about a particular phenomena or a problem. Then what they do hypothesis formulation. So based on whatever they have observed or gathered from the background knowledge, the researcher formulates a testable hypothesis that can explain the observed phenomena. Then comes the prediction. So researcher makes a prediction about the outcome of the experiment or the observation based on the hypothesis that they have formulated. Then comes the experimentation. So researcher will conduct an experiment. It will collect the data to test the hypothesis and evaluate the prediction. Then comes the analysis step. So researcher will analyze the data which has been collected through its experiments to determine whether the results support or refutes the hypothesis. Then comes the conclusion. So based on whatever has been analyzed with the data that has been collected through experiments, the researcher can draw a conclusion and it can communicate its finding, which may lead to further research, further revision of that hypothesis. So that is the scientific method. So the scientific method basically emphasizes on empirical observation, systemic experiments, and use of the logical reasoning to draw the conclusion about some natural phenomena. Now let's look into deductive approach of research. So in deductive approach, it begins with the general theory or the hypothesis that is given, and the work is towards a specific observation or some prediction. So it follows a top down logic where the researcher starts with a general premises, and then they test it against specific cases or some observation. So the deductive approach is basically commonly used in hypothesis driven research, where the researcher aim to test the existing theory or hypothesis by collecting some empirical evidence. So what are the key steps to this deductive approach? Theory formation. So the researcher starts with a general theory or the hypothesis that is based on existing knowledge, principle, or assumption. Now the hypothesis testing. So researcher derives some specific hypothesis or prediction from a general theory and test them through observations, experiment, and data collection. Next, data collection and analysis. So researchers collect the data or the evidence to test the specific hypothesis derived from a general theory. Then comes the conclusion. So based on the analysis of the data, the researcher will evaluate whether the evidence supports or it contradicts with the hypothesis uh, and by extension the general theory. Let's dig into inductive approach. So the inductive approach begin with a specific observation of the data and work towards general theories or patterns. So it follow a bottom up logic where the researcher starts with a specific case or observation and then they generalize from them to develop a broader theory or a hypothesis. So it includes the key steps like first, observation. So researcher will gather a specific observation, data or example which is related to a particular phenomena. Then pattern recognition. So researcher will identify the pattern, the trend or the regularity in the observed data uh, without any specific theory or hypothesis. Now hypothesis generation. So based on whatever we have observed with our pattern, the researcher generates a tentative type of hypothesis or a generalized hypothesis to explain whatever he or she has observed in that phenomena. Then testing and confirming. So researcher will test the hypothesis by collecting additional data or evidence to confirm or to refine the proposed explanations. Then comes the theory development. So over the time, repeated observations and testings may lead to development of a broader theory or a generalized theory that can explain the observed patterns. So the inductive approach is often used in explorative research when the researcher seeks to generate some new theories or hypotheses based on empirical observations. So the scientific method or the deductive approach and the inductive approach, they represent different strategies for conducting research, and they have their own limitations, they have their own advantages. So researcher may choose whatever is appropriate method based on their research question, their objective, and the nature of the phenomena under their study.
Thank you everyone for your patient ears. If you'll find this video useful, then do hit the like button. Also share it with your friends so that they get benefit with this video. And I'll see you for the next one.